Me good now? It's not. All right. Great. How you doing? How you feeling? Good. How are you? How you gentlemen doing here? Good? Excellent. It is, I'm going to try to put this here. I was trying before. Excuse me if I make some noise in the process. There we go, there we go, there we go. It's, I think, the kind of shirt. Okay. Can you hang? Okay. So, how about, can we love the unloving? Can we? Who are the unloving? We just had an opening message here about appreciating our friends, being discreet, and really value and being in a core, being a good friend. So usually we already have this way of thinking, this values about us. Who do we like? Who do we love? Who we don't like and who we don't love. So the way we live our lives, especially, day after day, we see how much the world has evolved and how much we have, in technology, in advancement. We're talking about going to Mars now. We already been to the moon, and so on. And at the same time, we see how much division, not just in this country, I'm talking about in the world, how much indifference, how much violence, how many crimes it's committed because of hate, because of unloving. So it's easy for us to talk about not loving people who are different than us and they commit very bad acts. And it's very easy to do that. That's a generic picture, right? But when we talk about the unloving, how about if the unloving, it's part of our circle of loved ones? When does the loved ones become unloving? It happens, doesn't it? I'm not making this up. It happens. It happens in my circle. I'm sure it happens in yours. We're talking about our friends, our children, our spouses, our partners, our colleagues, our neighbors, and the list goes on. These are people that at one point we love them very much, or we really care for them, but something happened that all of the love, all of that investment in that relationship, it kind of died, or we hit a wall. Did this just happen to me, or also you experienced that?
I think you know my family.
So it could be like sometimes, that that betrayal, the friend, or with unfaithfulness, all kinds of betrayals you imagine. It could be for many, many reasons that we were victimized by that person, by that being, by that situation that caused that person to do what he did. And we were hurt. And that trauma transformed all of that love into something else. Something that it became like unbearable. In the best circumstances, the best thing we do is just like, I just don't need to think about that person anymore. I'm just gonna cancel it, because if I keep thinking and the rage is gonna build, so it's better just to forget about it. Just like they say in New York, right? Forget about it. Let them live their life, I'll live my life, and that's it. And that is a tragedy. That is a tragedy. And we're just touching the surface of our circle of loved ones that became unloved. And it is hard for us to, there is a root cause for that, right? There is a root cause. And at the center of the, of this whole thing is because we are the victims. And 100% of the times, this person did do something that it hurt us, it causes financial loss, whatever loss, but we are in the center. That father who stopped loving the daughter because teenage daughter became pregnant, the son that started to go with the wrong company and started doing drugs, that person who had beliefs and that close person had different beliefs and they crashed and they have different values. That person who crossed you, who actually criticized for the good that you do, and the list goes on and on. At the end of the day, we are the victims. I'm insisting in the we. It's because it's centered on self. It's centered mostly on pride. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a parent. I have 4 kids. Most of us, I believe, you guys are parents too. If you're not, you are a son or a daughter. And we as parents, for instance, we want so much for our children. We want them to most times do what we did not do, what we cannot accomplish, so we invest in them. And it's like when they decided to go a different route, things go sour. It hurts our pride because we want them to be that model person. It's not necessarily that this person, and we're talking about children, but it could be anybody, that you have set some kind of expectation. And when that expectation is not met, it hurts us. It hurts our pride. It is like a betrayal. You had sort of like arranged in our mind that the path of this child of mine will be such, and it went south. So that is a tragedy. And there are many families that instead of understanding the situation in which that person, that child is, and it is a plague. I think it's one of the worst plagues that we have. It's drug addiction, because it's an escape, right? Usually, once somebody makes that choice, and it's a choice that is made, it's an escape. Drug addiction is a disease, and most times, the judgment comes that it was a betrayal. That, I use my case, if one of my children decided to go that route, it's probably going to be very hurtful. But what I will fail as a father to do is to recognize that my child's problem, it's my problem, not for me to be judging, but for me to raise that, try to help them to come out of that, and not feel betrayed or hurt in my pride. So this is just some food for thought about the people that we love that become the unloved. And there are many situations. How about the others, right? So what does it mean to love your neighbor? And that was probably in many books of philosophy, many scientific books to explain the need to love the neighbor because of the moral values that this means. But there is no one that brought not just the teaching, but the actual value and the actual meaning of that such as Jesus did. Jesus brought that concept of loving our neighbor not in a physical, material way, a love that really transcends. Just for a reference, and he talks about the love, the forgiveness, and the need for us to reconcile and to be in peace, the whole gospel. But he uses a very nice parable to talk about who is my neighbor when he's preaching. He's pretty much and one of the doctors of the law asked him, what is the greatest commandments? And he says, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your power, and love your neighbor as thyself. And then this was already in the law meaning the Pentateuch by Moses, right? Moses wrote the law, and those Jewish in those days, those Pharisees, they followed the law by the book. However, there are so much hypocrisy that they really, really not only did not apply the law in their lives, but it was just a concept that they could not really understand. He asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? And Jesus started these parables about the Samaritan, that Samaritan was an enemy of the Jewish. They lived not too far from each other, but they hated each other because they worshiped the same God, but they had everything different, and they were really, really bad enemies. They hated the Jewish and the Samaritan. They could not get along. So Jesus used a parable of a man, a Jewish man that was robbed and was badly hurt, and here comes a priest passes by and feels bad about that guy and does nothing, just, I'll pray for this person. And then somebody else comes along the way, the path, and it was like a Levite. A Levite was one of those very prominent members of the community, and that they were supposed to be very enlightened spiritual people, and they just also passes by and does nothing about it, just, maybe somebody's going to help him out. And then another one passes by, does nothing, and then the Samaritan passes by, and he was filled with compassion. Immediately he goes to the help, assists that man that was there, takes him to a hotel, puts wine into his wounds, pays for his stay, and tells the man in the hotel that if he needs more money, he will come back and pay him more. He really, really did, So Jesus saying, that's your neighbor. He asked them, who's your neighbor? Those three that passed by did nothing, or your enemy that actually did what it was needed to do, and they recognized. So this is something that it's all connected to his message of love your neighbor. Love your enemies, because it is easier for us to love those who are part of our love circle, our family members, our friends, everyone. But how can we actually love our enemies? Who are our enemies anyway? Sometimes we think about enemies just being people very, very far away, people in other countries, people of other races. But most times our enemies are right around us. Unfortunately, in this political arena, you see a lot of stuff going on, a lot of negativity going on, to the point that people actually see themselves as as enemies. To the point that you see even people say, it's a war, this party against that party, It's our guy, that's this guy, and it's terrible. We see our enemies in so many different ways. Sometimes we are our own enemy. And it's just because we give so much room for everything else but love, as it says here. So Jesus goes on to say in this, in Gospel of Matthew, in the chapter 5, he starts saying, like, you heard from the old, you heard from the law, you heard from the law of Moses, you heard from everything you've been teaching spiritually, that thou shalt love your neighbors, thou shalt love your loved ones, and thou shalt hate your enemies. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as the true children of your Father in heaven. And there's so much symbolism behind those words, right? Because even a person who's not very spiritual will find a lot of meaning to be called children of your Father in heaven. Our Father in heaven, it's also the main source of love and peace. And that's what at the end of the day, don't we all just want to have just peace? Just like, I just want to be in peace with the world. I want to be in peace with myself. I want everything to be in peace. But there is no way to have this peace if we don't go through that narrow path. If we don't act upon the self, if we don't act upon pride. Everybody's so quiet. Isn't it so? In science, we take like Freud, for instance. Freud is considered the father of psychiatry, right? Psychiatry. And he said in one of his works that it is impossible. He analyzed Jesus, Freud analyzing Jesus. He says, it's impossible to do what Jesus says to do. You cannot love your neighbors. You cannot. If somebody hits, he stated, if somebody hits in your cheek, you're not going to offer the other cheek. It's biologically impossible. And guess what? In the biological sense, he was right. But Freud was seeing everything in a sense of the physical, the material. Jesus is not talking to us in the physical, biological way. Jesus is talking to us deep inside. Jesus, it's talking to our spirit, a superior being that we are. As we are here in this condition, in this body, we are so much less than who we really are. Jesus is inviting us with all of these hard teachings. How can we do that? He's inviting us to transcend, to repair, to recover, to reinvent ourselves, to reconnect. It's a process of transformation and transcendence. That if we just feel and wake up every day just like I'm just a human being, it's okay because I'm just a human being. We are more than a human being. We cannot settle just for I'm just a human being. We're more. So I like Martin Luther King a lot because he he had this speech, actually in the church. It was a sermon in 1957, November 1957. And he says in that speech, and I'm going to bring just a couple pieces of that speech. So we let's invite MLK here to participate with us. Because he says that teaching of Jesus, that we should love our neighbors, we should love our enemies, it is the core of his philosophy, the core of his theology. It is what really made him do everything that he did. So love is the only thing that can turn an enemy into a friend. Connected to opening, right? We're talking about friends. Isn't it so interesting? But we're talking about love. But love, it's very complex. But it's interesting that in the Spirit's book, in question 897, and I'm going to read for you. I have it here. I keep dropping my water here. I'm going to leave it like this. My friends who know me knows that I drop everything here. So, in question 897, Kardec asked the spirits, Jesus has also said, love your enemies. But would it be not contrary to the natural tendencies to love our enemies? And does not unfriendliness proceed from a want of sympathy between spirits? In other words, it doesn't sound right. Right? Kardec is having this opportunity to speak and get guidance, get clarity from these enlightened spirits into this very question, the heart of this question. And the answer is the following. It would certainly be impossible for a man to feel tender and ardent affection for his enemies. And Jesus did not intend to prescribe anything of the kind. To love your enemies means to forgive them and to return good for evil. By so doing, you become their superior. By vengeance, you place yourselves beneath them. So, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we have 3 chapters, one after the other, that talks about exactly that. It's very short here, but in the Gospel according to Spiritism, you have blessed are the merciful. Then you have love thy neighbor. And then you have love your enemies. Very, very good reading, and everything so connected that what Martin Luther King says here in this love your enemy, his version of love your enemy. I'm just going to play 2 pieces so we can talk about it. And there's 2 parts for it. The first part, he talks a little bit of the causes. Why is this happening to us? Why are we called to forgive our enemies? And the second part, he will talk about why is this possible? What can we do? And what happens if we don't do it? So, let's do that. Okay, so while Italy is working on that for us, we have, and that's what Dr. King is talking about, that we separated in those 2 pieces, that I thought it was very, very appropriate for us to share that. And it is so full of passion and so much wisdom. So in this first part, he talks about how come we happen to be sometimes the enemy. Who's the enemy? And he started to talk about sometimes people like us because the way we look, the way we talk, what we talk about it, what we do. But there are times that people don't like us because the way we look, same thing, the way, the color of our skin, sometimes we're white, sometimes we black, too dark, too light. And it goes on. So it's a minute 6:15. Okay, great. Can you play here? 6.
Let me go and open the audio.
Okay.
While you're there, then you can.
I'll let the professional do his things. So he started to bring everybody in the audience to think, why is this? And why do we come to a situation in which we do have enemies? And we also can be the enemy. We can like people, we can love people, but we can hate people. We can hate people. How can that be? And then he comes to the conclusion that is everything is in self, meaning it's within us, because we are complex beings, we're complex people. So there's got to be something that has to do with our past. So Dr. King, even though he's talking about a very Christian message and he's putting his own interpretation to it, he's bringing us to a very close meaning of being an enemy and having an enemy, in the sense that it has to do with ourselves. It has to do with the core of who we are. And it has to do with the past. What past is he talking about? Past of 10 years ago, 40, 50 years ago? Or is he talking about a past a little more complex? So we see in Spiritism that we are just here again to try to do things a little better. We had many lives. We had many existences. And God gave us this gift, this privilege of coming back, doing better, trying to do best for ourselves and best for others. But the most important thing is for us to repair. We all had, if we are in this earth, it's because we are needed to be here, in the sense that earth is a hospital and it's a school, is anything but the paradise, the place of peace and love. We're not in a place of peace and love. We are in a place of transformation. We're going to get there, but we need to work hard. We need to work so hard to transform, to change those ill feelings that we have, to change our emotions, to change our spiritual values. Can we have a try now? Oh, okay. And I'll give you a sign when it's okay to break. So let Dr. King talk for about 2 or 3 minutes about this part that I'm talking about.
Your enemies by beginning with a look at self.
Look at self.
It seems to me that that is the first and foremost way to come to an adequate discovery to the how of this situation. Now, I'm aware of the fact that some people will not like you, not because of something you have done to them, but they just won't like you. I'm quite aware of that. Some people aren't going to like the way you walk. Some people aren't going to like the way you talk. Some people aren't going to like you because you can do your job better than they can do theirs. Some people aren't going to like you because other people like you, and because you're popular, and because you're well liked. They aren't going to like you. Some people aren't going to like you because your hair is a little shorter than theirs, or your hair is a little longer than theirs. Some people aren't going to like you because your skin is a little brighter than theirs. And others aren't going to like you because your skin is a little darker than theirs. So that some people aren't going to like you. They're going to dislike you not because of something that you've done to them, but because of various jealous reactions and other reactions that are so prevalent in human nature. But after looking at these things and admitting these things, we must face the fact that an individual might dislike us because of something that we've done deep down in the past, some personality attribute that we possess, something that we've done deep down in the past and we've forgotten about it, but it was that something that aroused the hate response within the individual. That is why I say begin with yourself. There might be something within you that arouses a tragic hate response in the other individual. This is true in our international struggle. We look at the struggle, the ideological struggle between communism on the one hand and democracy on the other.
Okay, you can stop.
We see the struggle between America and Russia.
He goes on to talk about the struggle in which the country was living there. Now, we're back in 1957. There were Cold War, there's a lot of stuff going on. And he gives a good parallel in all the hate, and he goes on to talk about that. But it is so important to understand the concept that hate, it's something that needs to be worked from inside, right? And we learned, and you probably heard most of the spiritual talks. I think I done many talks, and were many talks here, or any spiritist center that you go in the spiritist doctrine, the most famous things that you're going to hear from us is that we shall know ourselves. Thou shalt know thyself. That's a teaching that goes even before the time of, that's in ancient Greece. Some people gives that saying to Socrates, I think you call it, or Plato, but it was not necessarily them. It was in the temple of Delphi, and that is one of the most important and profound teaching that we can have, because if we know ourselves, we can really work with our problems, with our defects. So when we come here, if we had a defect in a prior life, we're going to come back with the same defect. And the Creator gave us the tools to correct that. And those tools are within us. Those tools, when we align ourselves with the laws of God, with the laws of nature, with all the laws, we're not talking about man's laws, we're talking about the real laws. We know that all of that it's within us, and we can access that at any time that we put aside our selfishness, our pride, me on the center, and I just look life in a very horizontal way. If I live in a very horizontal life, my life it's probably the way I came with my little defect. I might come out of here with that same defect, if not a little bit worse sometimes, because we can make things a little worse. We always progress. We don't regress. But we can waste a lot of time if we are not looking to recycle ourselves, to transform. There is a popular parable. I don't know if you guys heard about transcendence. There was a frog and a scorpion. You guys heard about the frog and the scorpion? No? So, it's a parable. So it's a fable, right? Fable. So the frog and the scorpion, they were in this forest. And there was like a flooding. The forest was flooded. So the frog went to and there was a lake that in the other side of the forest it was dry, but in this side of the forest everything was flooded. And here comes Mr. Scorpion running for his life. And the frog is just about to go across the lake to go to the other side. And Mr. Scorpion says, Mr. Frog, do you care to give me a ride? Because I'm going to die here if I stay. The flooding, it's the flooding. I need to go to the other side. The frog says to him, excuse me? Excuse me? You want me to give you a ride? You're a scorpion. You're a scorpion, I'm a frog. We don't mix. He says, Mr. Frog, just give me a ride. You're going to save my life. I ride in your back, and you go on with your life. It's just, across. Help me out. Please, I beg you. I beg you for my life. The frog says, it's not that I don't want to help you. It's because you're a scorpion, and you have that big sting in your back there. And I don't want to die. I'm going to put you in my back, you crazy? And the scorpion says, please, I beg you. The frog thought about it. And for a moment, the frog was like full of compassion. He thought, he's really going to die here. And I think I can do it. Okay, let's do it. So here goes the scorpion in the back of the frog. And the frog goes, he's an amphibian, so he's swimming. And he's taking care of the scorpion. And they get across the other margin and to the dry side of the forest. And then, right before the scorpion gets off his back to move on, what does he do? He stings him. And then that venom was so strong that the frog started just like dying. And the frog goes to him and says, Mr. Scorpion, you told me you were not going to do that. Why do you have to do what you just did? Now I'm going to die. The scorpion goes to him and says, I'm sorry, my friend. It is my nature. I'm a scorpion, and you were a frog. So, the moral of the story. We find ourselves most time living this existence still as a scorpion. The difference between these two animals is that the frog transcended. The frog knew that he was going to risk his life to put his enemy in his back. He knew that. He even gave the warning. But he considered all his options. And out of his free will, it's a very important word, out of his free will, he accepted, and he says, you know what? He's going to die. I'm going to give him a chance. But in doing so, he risked his own life. He transcended the fact that you're not looking just for yourselves. You're not looking for the here and the now. You're looking for something bigger that goes beyond our own needs. And that is transcendence. And that's what it takes to love our neighbor. So if possible, the second part that I wanted to show you here, it's very fast. It's 3 minutes. He's actually giving, Dr. King talks about how can we forgive our enemies. If we don't forgive, what can happen? Can you play the second part, Italo, if you find it there? So in what we learn in Christ's message,
What's the time?
oh, it was already set on the 1920.
Okay.
1920. So while Italo plays that, so Christ's message, the Christian message, humanity message, Spiritist message, the message, it doesn't matter the message, it matters the meaning, is that you have to void a wrong with a right. Loving will require forgiveness. It will require work. It will require us to transcend, to go beyond what is comfortable for us to do. But to do really something that it has risk, we have to go to the narrow path. It has consequences. But at the end of the day, that's the only way you can void evil for good. If everybody committed hate for hate, a crime for a crime, an eye for an eye, like Moses said, we would have been eliminated as humanity for a long time. We wouldn't be probably what happened to the dinosaurs, the beings that could not evolve. So it's part of our life in our progress. Are you ready there, Italo? Okay. So let's listen a little bit of Dr. King, and then we go for our closing.
You must not do it. Now, for the few moments left, let us move from the practical how to the theoretical why. It's not only necessary to know how to go about loving your enemies, but also to go down into the question of why we should love our enemies. I think the first reason that we should love our enemies, and I think this was at the very center of Jesus' thinking, is this, that hate for hate only intensifies the existence of hate and evil in the universe. If I hit you and you hit me and I hit you back and you hit me back and go on, you see, that goes on ad infinitum. It just never ends. Somewhere somebody must have a little sense, and that's the strong person. The strong person is the person who can cut off the chain of hate, the chain of evil. And that is the tragedy of hate, that it doesn't cut it off. It only intensifies the existence of hate and evil in the universe. Somebody must have religion enough and morality enough to cut it off and inject within the very structure of the universe that strong, powerful element of love. I think I mentioned before that some time ago my brother and I were driving one evening to Chattanooga, Tennessee from Atlanta. He was driving the car.
So that
You're not Julius Caesar.
you can close it, Italy. So I'll tell you the story that he was going to tell you. It's okay. It was just for us to pound on those couple words. So he's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I happened to go to that road not too long ago. It's a lot of hills, mountains. It's beautiful mountains between Georgia and Tennessee, just after finished Georgia in Tennessee. So he's driving with his brother, and everybody that comes across him, it was late at night, not a very, very good weather, and everybody had their high beams on. And his brother's like, my goodness, can't these people have some the decency of lowering their lights when they're crossing, like everybody does, the courtesy. And another one just went. He says, you know what, I'm going to put my high beam on and I don't care, because that's what everybody's doing. And Dr. King says, no, please don't do that. If you do that, we might have more destruction here. Imagine if somebody gets into an accident because you did that. So because other people are doing that to you, don't do the same. Don't put yourself in the same level. So the idea is for us to avoid the bad with the good. Love requires forgiveness. And forgiveness cannot come without us look inside of ourselves and see if we are worth of being forgiven. How can we judge? How can we call the other one an enemy if we don't place ourselves first? Which brings us to share this very, very relevant, very important, very profound part in Jesus, it's caught on this situation in which this lady, she was caught in adultery. So adultery was a punishable crime. A punishable crime. You pay with your life. However, and they want Jesus to be with their side, they were going to stone this woman, right? So for all of those people who were ready to stone the woman, she was the enemy. Because she broke the law. She brought shame. She was a very, very bad person, the scum of the earth. So she deserved to die. So guess what? In the law of Moses, it actually said that. That's exactly what it was prescribed. And they asked Jesus to take part of it, and Jesus ignores them at first, right? He's just writing down, and let him burn their hatred. Let him just burn everything. So once he needed to speak, he goes and says, the first one was without sin, throw the first stone. So by those words, by that teaching, by that call, he was calling the very essence of who we are, because we are those people still. We are throwing stones. We are doing a lot of stuff that we should have known better, but we're still committing acts that is not as strong. We're not killing anybody, but we're still throwing a lot of stones out there. The calling of Jesus is for us. Wait a minute. Know thyself. Know thyself. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? The word sin is like, are you perfect? You think you're better than this lady here? She was in a situation, and everybody knows are her judge because you think you're so much above her. So let me know if you really know who you are and if you really think you have the right to do so, because you don't. Jesus didn't say all of these words, of course, but that's the calling he's giving to everyone, us including. We were there, we're here, we're still doing the same thing. He's calling to our spirits. We have to transcend, we have to change that. And then after everybody left, he goes to the woman and says, where are those who persecute you? Who are those who are condemning you? She says, they all left. There is no one, Lord. So go and sin no more. He wasn't saying that she was doing something right and everything is okay. He says to her, go and sin no more. Repair yourself. We all have the opportunity to do things better and do things in a way that we find love and self-worth. So this is, as we close, our invitation is for us that when we say that, the very Lord's Prayer, right? In the second part of the Lord's Prayer, forgive our trespasses, forgive our debts, as we forgive those who trespass us. Our message of the night, not only for, including myself, all of us, is that we really stop. We really stop. When we ask for forgiveness, that we go inside of ourselves and we recognize that if everything is okay right now, I feel that I am a very good person. Let us recognize that we had other lives. We had other experiences. We had hurt other people. We had caused pain and suffering. We're not this good just right now. We are eternal beings. So once we ask for forgiveness, let us place ourselves with humility and recognize that we do need forgiveness, because what happens, we pass this part of the Lord's Prayer so fast that we think everything is okay with us. And then we go to forgive our enemies. And then forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We cannot go to the second part if you don't pass the test of the first part first. We cannot forgive others, and we cannot receive forgiveness if we don't understand that we do need it. We need a lot. So once we put ourselves in the same position of our enemies, we are the same. And being the same, we both need forgiveness. Much peace for you all. And have a good night. We're going to invite our friends now to do the passes and the vibration, right? Thank you.